I remember the first time I had to create a budget for work. It seems like a simple process, but until you've actually done it, you really don't know how to get started. Hi, my name is Rudolph Stewart. I'm a CPA with an MBA in finance, and on this channel, I talk about all things accounting and finance. I'm the founder of Outside Accounting, a virtual accounting firm. Now, let's get back to my problem. So, my very first job where I had to create a budget, I was responsible for creating a budget for the East Coast of the US. And I'd only been at the company for about 6 months, and so I didn't really know the operations that well. And I was struggling trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to create this budget for this huge business that I didn't really know? After talking to some different people, I kind of realized actually I was in a regional role, and I had different finance teams that reported into me. So actually, I didn't need to create a detailed budget. I just needed to create like a framework to help the individual finance teams create their own detailed budget. So that's the first thing I learned, is that when you're budgeting, it's a good idea to do it at a high level and then do a detailed budget. Today's video, we're going to be looking at how to create a high-level budget. And then in a subsequent video, I'll go through sort of like how I would approach doing a detailed budget. Now, at the very, very highest level, the first thing to realize is a budget is going to be trying to forecast what your profit and loss statement is going to look like. So let's break that down. So what's a profit and loss? Well, the first thing it does is it shows what your income is and what your expenses are. So on a high level, maybe you might want to start off by saying, this is what I anticipate my income to be, this is what I anticipate my expenses to be, and this is the profit I'm looking for. Even though I say we're going to do a high level budget, I wouldn't start at such a high level. I'd break it down to another level where I look at the income and the expenses in slightly more detail. So in this case, I'm going to be using an example that I am doing a budget for an event. I'm an event management company, and I've got one event for the whole year, and that's all I do. So the first thing I want to do is, from a sales perspective, I want to break it down by different types of sales. So I'm going to have sponsorship, ticket sales, merchandise, and food and beverage. Those will be all of my different sales aspects. For expenses, I'm going to have direct costs, selling, general, and administrative expenses, and I'm going to have overhead. Now, the third step that I'm going to go through is I'm going to then assign certain percentages to the revenue and to the expenses, and then I'm going to work that through in a spreadsheet and see how I feel that those numbers, whether or not they make any sense, or if I want to tweak them a little bit more. So now let's take a look at a hypothetical. Let's say we're going to be doing a budget for a summer festival. What we're going to do is come up with some basic assumptions. And here my assumption is that I'm going to have a total income of $100,000. And then next, I'm going to come up with some assumptions about different types of income streams. So I'm going to have some sponsorship income, some ticket income, merchandise income, and then food and beverage income. Once I've come up with my income streams, I'm going to then assign a percentage of what that will make up of my total income. So here I've said, okay, sponsorship is 20%, tickets will be 30%, merchandise 10%, and food and beverage 40%, and that all totals up to 100% of my income. Then I'm going to look at allocating some costs. So I've got three types of costs: direct cost, sales, general, and administration, and overhead. My direct costs, I'm assuming, will be 20% of my sponsorship income. My ticket costs will be 30% of the income, merchandise 30%, and food and beverage 30% as well. For the sales, general, and administrative, I'm not allocating those to an income stream. I'm just going to allocate that as a percentage of total revenue. And I'm saying SG&A is going to be 50% and overhead is going to be 20%. And where did those numbers come from? In this particular case, I just made them up. But what would really happen is you would do some research. Let's say you're doing this for the first time. You would do some research to see what industry norms are. So like in this case, for the income or the budget for a festival, what percentage normally comes from food and beverage? What percentage normally comes from sponsorships? And that gives you like a good target to work towards. And if you've been doing this for a few years, you'll then have actual numbers from prior years that you could use to help base these estimates. Okay, so now that we've got those assumptions in, let's calculate and see what that comes out. So I just do that here on another sheet. The blue section up at the top, those are just my assumptions that we just looked at. And once we've applied those percentages, we now have your high level budget. So here are the income amounts that add up to 100,000, and then the direct costs. So just to kind of show, so we said sponsorship direct cost is going to be 20% of the sponsorship income. So that 4,000 is just 20% of the 20,000 income from sponsorships. And then, as I mentioned before, then the sales, general, and administration, that's based on the total income. It's not broken out by different revenue stream. So that we said was going to be 50%. So that ends up being 50,000. And then the overhead we said was 20%, and that's 20,000. So when all that is said and done, based on this high level budget, we're saying that I'm going to have a profit of $5,000. Once I've done that, I want to kind of think back and think, okay, does this make any sense? Is 5,000, does that seem like a really high amount? Does that seem like a really low amount? And just kind of sense check it. And if I for whatever reason, I'm not happy with that number, then I'll go back in and I will kind of play around with around the calculations, or the assumptions, I should say, the percentages. So let's say at this point, I'm pretty happy with that. It's not a huge profit. It seems reasonable to me based on, what I know and the research I've done. So then the next part is, now I want to work on a detailed budget. And to do the detailed budget, I don't want to do that myself. I want to now start working with other people. So now what I want to do is I want to take these high level numbers and I want to assign them to people on my team. So for example, the person that's responsible for sponsorships, I will say, okay, your target is to bring in 20,000 in sponsorships, and you can spend up to 4,000 in things like marketing, or maybe wining and dining potential sponsors, or you've got 4,000 in your budget to use to bring in that 20,000. And then, for example, the merchandising person, I would say, okay, you've got to bring in 10,000 in income in sales, and you can spend 3,000 in order to do that. And what that means is, now they know, okay, they've got to think, I can spend 3,000 in merchandise, but I've got to be able to turn around and sell that stuff for 10,000 to the people who attend our summer festival. So that kind of gives them some idea of what they're working with. And so similarly, with each of these different areas, you would give targets. And then for the sales, general, and administrative, and overhead, because those aren't allocated to one of these income streams, either there would be someone else that will do it, or most likely, if you're doing the budget, you would be tasked with trying to work out the detailed budget for that. So hopefully that makes sense. And what's really good about this is, it kind of gives the guys who are working on it some direction. And then you guys can sit down and talk through, their detailed budget. And maybe you are actually going to do it for them in terms of plugging things into the spreadsheet. But they're giving you the assumptions that you're going to use to create it. Or, in some cases, they do it themselves. So I hope you found that example enlightening, and kind of highlights how this whole process works in terms of doing a high level budget. And then in another video, we'll go through doing a detailed budget and see what that would look like. That's it for this week. I hope you found that helpful, an overview of how to put together a high level budget. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer them. This is Rudolph Stewart from Outside Accounting. If you have any questions about how to organize or run your finance function, please get in touch. You can reach me at www.outsideaccounting.com and just make a note on the contact page. Or you can also email me at rudolph@outsideaccounting.com. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.